I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on vacation. Andrew Kuo does not, will not, and may never take days off. Andrew Kuo, how are you, buddy?
Pretty good, man. I feel like I am like the best hologram version of myself every day. It's not like this is not the real me. This is just the new me. Happy Earth Day, man.
It is Earth Day.
Pretty sick.
Not a banner year for the Earth. Unless, of course, we are the virus and nature is returning.
That's true. Nature is probably feeling pretty good. It has a little scratch, a little rash, and we are the rash. But overall, it's got good cholesterol. It's better now. It doesn't have that gas. It's not as gassy as it used to be a month ago.
It's always interesting to see those nature specials that are about, like the ruins of a city that have been taken back by nature. I think there's a book about that as well. I forget exactly, but they kind of speculated about how long it would take to overgrow New York City or Central Park and things like that. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, for the first times in our life, we're seeing that happen a bit, but it's only really introduced to us via, look, here's some goats walking through like a street in Peru.
Yeah, there was that raccoon maybe a few days ago that was in, was it a supermarket? There was a kangaroo in Australia like hopping through what used to be crowded streets.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the baby turtles are not being blinded by the light and they're going into the water. You're like, that's really good. And then you're like, yeah. But those lights are going to come back on.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought about that in terms of architecture and stuff, like the idea of like a straight white brick wall and like not brick wall, just like the white box, the white cube kind of thing. I'm like, eventually you're gonna get a leak from somewhere, and some kangaroo is gonna start chilling in the corner, and it kind of like doesn't work as perfectly as we always do, and I guess that's the theme.
This is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, but I don't really remember it until like the 90s.
With that superhero cartoon, right?
I'm trying to remember how it came into prominence. I feel like it was like a school thing where it was like, oh, it's Earth Day, and like everyone should get out their markers and draw like the Earth or something.
Was it a Bill Clinton thing?
It feels of that ilk. Mm-hmm. That there was a governmental celebration of Earth Day because it was probably some like hippie thing that had been rolling since like whatever, 1970.
It has a pretty high ceiling and a high floor, right? The ceiling is the floor, but there's no like downside being like, yo guys, we're gonna really play up this Earth Day thing. Like it's a dunk, I would say.
Was it a mistake not rolling, no pun intended, 420 and Earth Day together into like a sort of hippie cornucopia?
Well, now it makes more and more sense moving forward, but even like 4 years ago, no bueno on the weedage, man. That's just lazy people.
The perception of weed has changed. The perception of environmentalism has changed too, though. Mm-hmm. Because it was very sort of carob instead of chocolate, or organic
delicious
peanut butter, the kind with no sugar that you have to mix up and the oil is on the top. I have some flashbacks from those kind of co-ops growing up.
Oh my God, I have so many. The smell of peanut butter everywhere.
Yes, and those co-ops all smelled the same too. It's some weedy, I couldn't even tell you what it was, but I would identify that smell immediately.
Yeah, it was like some fragrant cardboard type smell with some like dusty barley air and a ton of peanut butter. There was one in my hometown that had a peanut butter grinding station like near the register, almost near every register, almost as if to say like, we know you're done with your shopping. Have you forgotten to buy peanut butter? Point of purchase.
I accidentally grabbed a can of like organic peanut butter of that variety recently, and I had horrible flashbacks. I was like, just give me my Jif and I'll be on my way. I know it's basically like eating a candy bar, but it's delicious. That
It's
gritty, oily, very, in Steve 1989's vernacular, thirst-provoking peanut butter is not for me.
Yeah, what do you like? You skim off the oil, but it just comes back, man. It like regenerates like a green onion.
A scallion planted in my windowsill box during captivity.
May 100 scallions bloom, Ben.
Does it work?
I think it does work, but and it's really cool to see something grow like a chia pet, but you can't cook with it. You can't do anything with it because it doesn't yield that much.
Oh, you couldn't plant like the root stems of a bunch of scallions and then use the greens that grow from it? You could, right?
Oh, absolutely, but it doesn't, like, depending on how much you use, whatever, it doesn't yield that much, and scallions aren't that expensive, but it's cool. I considered doing it, but I haven't yet. Maybe I'll do it this week.
I would agree. In terms of pot real estate, scallions, growing them, you're like saving 99 cents.
Yeah, it's true. And they're not as good, but and your apartment kind of smells like garlic, maybe. But it's cool to watch something grow that fast and just think about saving money. Even though
I'm all in favor of it. I wish I had a little garden. It'd be nice to have some herbs on deck.
Can you make that happen?
No, because the only place I could actually try to grow stuff is well populated by squirrels and birds.
Yeah.
They would rob me out of house and home. So, yeah, that health food store, I assume they still exist, but I don't know the last time I was in one. It might be some like 80s, 90s shit.
They're a bit of a dying breed, and I'm only assuming that that's happening because of Whole Foods, right? Because Whole Foods kind of monetized it in a middle way that kind of, I mean, there's in my neighborhood, there's a line to go into Whole Foods, but regular supermarkets, you can just go straight in. Like, people love that place still, even though Amazon kind of changed it. But isn't it because like there has been a bigger company that kind of got rid of all those small little peanut butter shops?
That's a good theory. I also don't understand the fascination with Whole Food though, because I've seen these exact same lines that you're referring to. The one in Williamsburg, line all the way down the street.
Really?
People
On
queuing
Bedford?
up. Yeah, all the way down the side of the building there on North 4th or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you've got Food Town, a reasonably good supermarket, a block away, no line. Just saw people walking in and out. Like, why would you wait an hour to get probably about the same groceries?
Yeah, it's probably, right? And I also do that. I just go into like this associated supermarket on 2nd Avenue, and there's never a line. But the produce is not as bountiful. There's no like amazing orange selection. There's no like fresh fish counter or fresh meat counter. It's just like packaged stuff, but you can get organic stuff there too.
I've grown a little bit more optimistic about maintenance of the food supply.
Me too, yes.
I got a little, I felt as if it was getting a little dicey a week and a half ago, and we discussed it. But now I'm a little more confident.
I as well, because the stories have not, the worst case scenarios have not been apparent to us, and when we go out there, we see enough things to eat, and everybody who wants to buy something, who wants to wait, can get it.
Yeah, and some of these dovetail with, the results we're seeing in various states. And one theory that's been postulated was that New York got a particularly viral like toxic loaded version of this via Europe, where the Asian variety of the Wu-Tang flu came to the West Coast, and that's why California and Portland and other places didn't really get smacked like New York did. But New York just got hammered by the same one that crushed Italy and Spain.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's specifically true, but that could lead to some of these optimistic signs that we're seeing in various places. Like New York, it looks like we've turned the corner and it's getting better. And in terms of new cases, hospitalizations, deaths, we look like we're on the right path. Although I think we're still cresting in a lot of America.
Yeah, I mean, if I can, like, make this virus a thing that we can talk about like a person, I'm like, at its small sliver of generosity is it's predictable. Like, if the worst person in your friend circle annoys you the most, and then if they're predictable in the way they annoy you, like, that's okay. You know what's coming, you know? And New York is kind of on the trajectory that scientists thought it would be on.
Yes. And the point I was making before was that it seems to be closer in terms of its fatality rate to places like Italy and Spain versus the West Coast. But again, these are all just theories that people are tossing around.
You talked to a mutual buddy who lives in Italy right now. Can you bless us with some firsthand reporting, some information?
Yeah, my friend is in Milan, and she said that they're going to allegedly reopen in about 2 weeks. They're planning on, I think, May 4th or May 5th. Mm-hmm. And they can't leave their houses at all. They need to have a pass, and that's to get groceries or get medicine. They can go out and walk a dog, but they're only also allowed something like, 800 feet or 800 meters from their home. Really, really strict with large fines if you're caught outside. And I think Spain is somewhat similar. Paris is somewhat similar. So the U.S., for all of the grousing about the draconian state, the U.S. has not instituted those kind of things on even our hardest hit locations.
We don't want that smoke.
The guys who are like bitching about it in Minnesota, it's like, yo, what's the big deal? You couldn't get lawnmower repair parts in person?
I mean, yeah, we don't want how China may or may not have suppressed it, and we don't want what South Korea had to do, or even Taiwan, and we're seeing numbers out of there that maybe are changing. Yeah, like I do definitely have a ton of sympathy for people who are like, you shut down my non-essential business and I'm going to go bankrupt. I need to go down swinging. Like, okay, if no one comes to my hair salon, then no one comes, but I need to give myself a chance before I have zero money and I have to move out of my house. Like, there's not enough help from the government. The government didn't help us enough.
Of course. And to me, that's what the issue should be. But naturally, this being America and how people's allegiances lie, they're not blaming the country for its inability to care for them in a time of need and keep them safe. They're kind of blaming themselves.
Yeah, we're turning on ourselves for sure.
Like, oh, you won't let me go out and earn my living. I want to work. Well, what you should say is, why won't you take care of me while my health is jeopardized? Why won't you pay for testing? Why won't you pay for treatment? Why won't you pay for cancer treatment? Like, the answer is so close. But people are just kind of looking the other direction. Like, oh, you're preventing me from going back to my job, which enriches other people. I want my employer health care to kick in.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're close. You almost get it.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about, like, sports and the Knicks all the time. And right, I do feel like we're arguing about really important things, but we're missing the one thing, which is, like, we need help from the people who have the ability to help us, and they have to drop everything and do their best, but instead they're turning the blame onto us, right? Like, it's open. It's a governor's. Like, you can do whatever you want. There's 4 million tests out there. That's more than anyone else. What do you want from us? We're like, real help, money.
Liberate Michigan so I can go back to my job.
Yeah. Or it's just like, yeah, Congress is in session again.
Why won't you let me be a wage slave?
Yeah.
I'm dying to be that. Come on, man. Let me wage slave.
I know.
I'll die in order to wage slave.
We desperately, from day one, from day zero, -1, we needed, shout out to Agent Zero, Net Zero. I desperately wanted this government to step the fuck up. And it did the exact opposite, which wasn't surprising, but still very frustrating and disappointing. And they have the ability to change some things, and we probably won't see it.
I've beyond given up on hope that the federal government in its current state will do the right thing. I think we can
chalk that up for an L, like tacos in New York.
We can pray for harm reduction, that it won't be as bad as it could be. But in terms of doing the right thing, that's not even on the table. I hope these foxes we put in charge of the hen house will do a good job. It's like maybe like they won't rip them all to shreds tonight. Maybe there'll be a couple eggs left. Maybe that'd be nice. We could have some of those for breakfast.
My hope is the foxes would be like, one fox would be like, wait a second, if we eat all the hens, there will be no more hens. Like something. So, their own interests, their own fox interests in mind, but also being like, oh, don't eat the hens that lay eggs because we can eat those too. Okay. We should be easy on the hens and like be careful about it because it's all the hens we have.
And then they're like, at the same time, we are foxes.
Yeah. And
so we should probably just eat all the hens.
Yeah. Listen, it's too late to change now. We are foxes and you are hens. What can we do?
It's out of our paws.
Right. I washed my paws of this entire debate.
So beyond Earth Day, I'm mostly celebrating a discussion that brings one of my favorite rappers into the contemporary discussion, into the discourse. My guy, French Montana. Finally.
Amazing.
We've got ourselves a non-boomer in the mix.
Yes.
Teddy Riley, Babyface,
right.
DJ Premier, Manny Fresh. French Montana.
But boomerism is a state of mind. Is he mired in a debate that involves a boomer of some sorts?
So, I hear what you're saying. So, can you explain exactly what got French Montana into the conversation? I know it's about who's got more hits, him or Kendrick. How did this evolve?
I guess this happened in April. I got quickly educated on it today. Like, this happened earlier, maybe in February. French.
This is like trying to figure out when Corona got here, man.
Oh, absolutely. But French fired some shots and maybe said that he put him next, stage by stage in Coachella or something. And French has maybe more hits than Kendrick. And boomers love to argue about this because Kendrick signals very virtuous, authentic rap music. If you enjoyed Fat Beats and RZA and DJ Premier, like, he's a really great artist.
Yes, there's that, but there's also the intellectualism strain. Mm-hmm. It's not just he conjures the golden age of rap. That's part of it. Yeah. Soul samples, melody. He's a lot like Andre from Outkast in terms of...
He values lyricism.
Lyricism, artistry, song structure, things like that. But there's also that he's smart.
And he's an activist.
Yeah. I think you used the phrase like virtue signaling in there. And I don't mean it in a negative way. I just mean Kendrick. Like that's a good guy. He's smart. He's a conscious rapper versus French, who is in many ways the exact opposite.
Right. French is in the moment. He's in the club. He's on people's tracks. He's flamboyant. He's
considered
not an activist.
he's considered artless. He's considered materialistic. He's coarse in his language.
Yep. And he has a different fan base. So the fan base that has a louder voice on Twitter, the Kendrick one, is really coming after French. As a resident French expert, what say you, Ben?
I'm sorry. Was there French slander on the timeline? Montana. Well, I'll say this.
What's up?
Kendrick is certainly a better rapper in terms of, these qualifying things like lyricism, bars.
Damn was a great record.
Yeah, I mean, Kendrick has a lot of great records. Kendrick is a really, really talented rapper, a great artist. I don't know if he has more hits than French Montana, because my own understanding of this is, because I've seen one of these beat battles, is that I'm going to frame it into that context. Okay, they're going back and forth, a minute of each hit. This is my understanding of it. This may not be the actual debate that's, catching fire across social media, but my understanding of it, I'm just looking this at as a beat battle. They're not rapping. Okay, 20 tracks to 20 tracks. Go against each other. Drop the beat, hear the hook, hear a verse, out. And I'm like, I think French has a really good case. I think he's got a great case. Mm-hmm. You look at, he's got a few huge hits, like Pop That, All the Way Up, Shot Caller, Don't Panic. He's also been on remixes, which he was not good, and which were not his hits, but he was on those records none the same, like Ferg's work, Chris Brown's Loyal, Drogba, Bugatti. Like, Kendrick's got some hits, but when, like, I woke up in a new Bugatti. Sorry, that's a French song.
Yep. Yeah, right.
He didn't make it, he didn't earn it, but he is on that record officially.
Right.
So, and then he's got all those ones that are kind of like boomer bait. I think that's his secret weapon in the beat battle. Because he worked with Harry Fraud, and they used all those old 90s samples. So, like, Shot Caller is a Lords of the Underground sample. He's rapped over...
Recipes Chinks.
I know. Coke Boy, speaking of Chinks, is a Royal Flush sample.
That's a great song.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
State of Mind, I think that was off Mac and Cheese 3, was over Jay-Z's The Evils.
Yeah,
He rapped over Bucktown. He rapped over Nine's What You Want. So I'm saying he's got boomer bait. And then, I don't know, like, a lot of it's just because he's in New York, though, because I don't think you could play on a national Instagram thing, off the rip, or Playing in the Wind, like, or Tap That. Songs that have, like, Stack Bundles and Max B, and get, like, a response.
Right.
I think they're too regional.
Interesting.
Like Cocaine City. How many people know that? That was like his mixtape sort of breakout. It was him, like Meek Mill's got his old mixtape thing.
Right.
But like, no one listens to that stuff though.
Well, what's up with Thug coming out impassioned in favor of Kendrick? That was surprising to me. I mean, Kendrick is well loved in almost every community in the rap world except French's community. But French, backtracked. He was just like, yo, Kendrick is amazing. All I'm saying is, like, look at my resume. His
resume's really good.
He is no joke. French Montana is no joke. And he had a point, and, the way to get people riled up about this is to throw shots like that, to fire shots like that. But, it could backfire on him. But I think this is a more reasonable debate than a lot of people give it credit for.
I mean, I'm Team French.
Yeah, I mean, me
like
too.
you're telling me that he drops Return of the Mac, that's just not going to beat whatever Kendrick does because it's hilarious that it's French singing Mark Morrison with different words. That's a win.
Yes, right. He's funnier than Kendrick, which I'll always side with the funnier rapper.
Like, Chopper Down, You got the whole South. They're on deck. That was him and Waka, TTG. Come on, French was great.
Great.
The other thing is, he made so many songs between like Coke Boys, working with Chinks and those dudes, working with Max B, with like Rick Ross, with Waka. Like, he's just got an infinite amount of records. And I'm not saying they are good enough to like play here, but you just look at his discography. Like, man, French is not a slouch.
No. And
Trap House, Freaks.
Yeah.
Go off, King.
And Kendrick's career kind of reminds me of like, there's that GQ cover story about Kanye that came out this month, and there's a quote in it where like Kanye was like, "Yo, I was driving down the street listening to rap radio with my family, and none of my songs came on, and it was like humiliating, And I'm like, right, because he doesn't have hits anymore. He certainly has hits. Like, you can list off great Kanye songs, especially from 10 years ago, that were like in cars on Canal Street, like blasting out of cars. But he's a different artist now. His albums are well received for the most part, but don't have like a street anthem to it. I think about Beyonce in the same way. Anything she does is going to be massive and huge and be a number one thing. But like, she's recently in the last 4 or 5 years, like, doesn't have like a hit we're all like blasting in the streets. And it's just a different model and a different kind of artist. And of course these artists want to be both. But Kendrick to me is one of those guys, like, Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, like, huge. We all knew that song, But I think he has shifted towards the Kanye end of this kind of path, right?
I like Kendrick. He's not my favorite rapper. I totally respect his artistry. And he's got a lot of good records. And if you stack those up in terms of quality, yes. Like, they are great songs. As you were saying, like, Don't Kill My Vibe. That's a great record. The one that uses like the MC8 CMW sample off of his first album, like Mad City. Mm-hmm. Like, those are great. Those are hard. Like, I really like those records.
Yeah.
But he also doesn't really have like surprises. And that's why I'm framing this as a beat battle. If it's like, he's just going to play all the songs off of his, couple albums. You're like, these are all good. I figured you'd play that one. That's off your album. Like, right. French at least is exciting. Like, oh, right. You made that 9 years ago with Stack Bundles. R.I.P. Stack.
And is it interesting because of its relative obscurity? Is that where the fun is? Because, some artists, like, when you hear, we know Premier saving Biggie, and that is kind of deflating because he's not giving us a surprise. But is it just because that Biggie song was so ubiquitous?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And other people may also feel about Kendrick how I do about French, to be fair. Like, if they listen to his old mixtape stuff, I didn't. Yeah. So it wouldn't resonate with me the same way. 90% of the songs that I just rattled off that you're like, right. Excuse me?
Yeah,
what
exactly.
are you talking about? Yeah. Never heard of these songs, let alone would care about them if he played a grainy version of it on Instagram Live on Saturday night. Even if Ellen was doing a headspin.
Which she's
doing.
And Zuckerberg's tagging the bathroom as usual. Big Zuck. And maybe it's my feed, but I think a lot of these debates that we're having that are really fun at the base level, like, no one's getting hurt. We're arguing about art. This is great. Even like the Jordan versus LeBron thing, we're arguing about almost feelings. And I think that's kind of cool. Very cool. But a lot of it has to have like a boomer element to it, being like, this is authentic and you're comparing something that isn't authentic to this. And it's almost predictable in a way. It's like, oh, French is trending? Which boomer came after him?
And Kanye, who you just referenced for the same reason, was masterful from day one at that balancing act of being a cohort of Jeezy, being part of Rockefeller, which was like, the hottest crew at the time, while also being at least performatively a backpacker and
Yes.
he used soul samples, and his entire image was that he was a normal guy. He was identifiable with, he was relatable, but he also had a really nice watch. And
Right.
Kanye then became a superstar, and as he sort of gravitated away from that image of the normal guy, and became more of a superstar, we kind of have discussed this idea that it was all good until the music wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
That it didn't. Once he got to that peak, Kanye being a weirdo, saying odd stuff, maybe having, being bipolar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was all cool as long as he was putting out the life of Pablo and Yeezus. But now he's driving around and can't hear himself on the radio. It's like, well, you put out Jesus is King and you put out Ye.
Yes, exactly, right.
Those records didn't sell. Those records didn't have hits. No one cared. One was a gospel album. Like, there is a reason you're not on the radio, man.
Yeah, and that's like his real artistic turn, right? Like, that's like that's like the solitude of that experience, being like, I think I am the best painter of all time. Do I have to fucking cut my ear off to show somebody that everyone should have one of my paintings in their bar, in their restaurant, in their living room? And he's going through that now, and it's like, I think that's just a way an artist ages. And Kanye,
For sure.
he's given us more than a decade of bangers, and I'll deal with, like, I kind of like that gospel record, and I love what he's doing now quite a bit, even just as much maybe. But you're right, it's the Peter Luger's thing. You get a bad review for your service as soon as the stakes are bad,
It's like, Graduation sold 2.7 million copies and went 2 times platinum, but Jesus is King sold 100,000.
Yeah.
That's why you're not on the radio, my dude.
Yeah, and he would claim, like, well, if I was on the radio, I would get up to 1 mil, but you're not giving me a fighting chance. And this is very Corona related, right? It's just like, before I go down, let me take some swings on Hot 97. And it's like, nah, it's gonna bring the whole station down. No one wants to hear that gospel stuff, like, on Friday night.
And if you're the label, it's like, give me a single I can work, man.
Yeah.
Like, you're Kanye, everyone will listen. Just give me a hit, and we'll work it. We'll work that record. Make you a star, kid.
Yeah. I've always thought that with
Send out
teams.
those vinyl promo singles.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen like managers, producers. I mean, the producer thing is different, but platforms get big because of things that they've promoted, like whether it be albums or podcasts or hot take sports guys, and it always comes down to talent, like. The heavy lifting Stephen A. Smith does for an entire network owned by Disney is insane. That guy is so good at what he does and irreplaceable. And that's how I feel about Kanye, right? Like, people are like, well, give me a better record. And he's like, well, fuck you. I gave you everything. Can't you help me? I'm like, oh, it doesn't work in that direction ever. Like, a label cannot pump up an artist. The last example I can think of that was a label. The industry really tried hard to make Lizzo a thing, and they did eventually, but it was a very winding road. Where like, we need to make her a thing. It's her time.
Was she an industry plant?
Yeah, I mean, her story is well documented about how she had a lot of false starts, and then finally it fucking took off, and she is where they wanted her to be, and but it was miscalculated a couple times.
I think in 2020, it's harder to succeed as an industry plant than it was many moons ago, because back then the labels were the arm or the promotional vehicle to turn a song from obscure into something that was on the radio, something that was on video. And now it's like, if you have a heater, you just put it up on YouTube and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are still levers to pull, but look at Bobby Shmurda. You know, that song was just in the street. He made a video and it exploded, and then he was a
Young
star.
M.A. too.
Free Bobby.
Yes.
But it's tougher to do that as a label when people can do it organically without money behind it.
This is our Quibi versus Patreon YouTube thing, right? And I don't think Quibi has taken my social media feed on by fire. On no one's really reposting Quibi things or talking about Quibi things, but YouTube, I mean, still undefeated, right? And the production value is a fraction of what it takes to get a movie star and a cinematographer and a director. It's
remarkable how much effort and thought and money goes into things like Quibi, or I don't know if the Graydon Carter project, I don't know the scale of that, but it's remarkable how little they pop up in your feed sometimes.
Yeah.
And you started a whole new platform for a small, 10-minute clips with a bunch of celebrities, and I don't encounter it. I don't see it. There's nothing that I ever looked at and said, let me click on that. And maybe I just wasn't excited enough to sign up for it. And if I did, I'd be in that Quibi universe digesting that product. Yeah. But as it is, as someone who was very much on the fence or not that excited about the prospect of quick bite entertainment, I don't see it. I see the name come up as a joke.
Yes. I think, and it's ironic that it's called Tidal, but I think that will be a landmark moment when, remember they revealed what Tidal was, and they had all those superstars on stage at the same time, and it looked like a superhero movie. Like Daft Punk was there, Jay-Z was there, Beyonce was there, and you're like, oh my god, these are all the biggest names in music entertainment for the last 10 years. But we never really bought it because they're like, well, what are you offering us? It's like exclusive content by the artists you love. It's like, yeah, but as soon as that comes out, we can pirate that. What else do you have? It's like, well, it's that and a subscription. We're like, ooh, okay, good luck with that. If you do a good job and one of these artists makes something we need to hear through your platform, we'll do that. But it was a misreading of the whole room, I thought.
I don't know if Tidal was successful or not. I don't know if it is successful or not. I think one marker could be that Jay-Z put his stuff back up on Spotify and iTunes and stuff.
Tidal is modest. It's still alive, though.
There were many people who signed up for it on trial memberships in order to get access to a Jay-Z album or a Frank Ocean album or a Kanye album. Yeah. But I think you're right. The perception from everyone was that, well, you're not going to stop me from getting to music.
Yeah, exactly.
And why would you want to do that? Yeah. Why would you want me not to hear your album? This is a two-way street.
Yes, exactly.
My listenership, my patronage is as valuable as you trying to get me to pay you for that product.
Yeah. I always thought technically...
Not saying that's true, but I think that is the perception. But I listened to your album 200 times. I did you a solid. I listened to your album a lot.
Right. Yeah, fans want that agency, always. And I thought when the digital stuff kind of leveled the music industry, it was a bummer because we saw a lot of our favorite artists kind of have a tough time. But also, the music biz kind of screwed us over as fans for so long. A CD is $16.99. Tickets have a service charge for each one I buy. Come on, a t-shirt is worth it for $35, totally worth it. Those are the things I still cherish.
Honestly, the only thing you can get today that's worth what it costs is a $35 t-shirt, maybe a $65 sweatshirt, $35 hat, maybe a poster of bullies, some stickers. Yeah. Those are good, and they come from the source. No middlemen there. Not like Ticketmaster or Airbnb or Amazon. These dirty, rotten middlemen.
can I use my credit card to buy this T-shirt? Okay, I'll take 5.
Absolutely, no problem at all.
But I really cherish those items, and I think that like maybe because they cross over into a different like universe, and it's a way to talk about like the multitudes of like what a fan is. It's like you're a Kanye fan, you don't only want to buy the album, but you want to talk about the shoes and sneakerheads and sneaker culture and fashion and proximity to Virgil, and it opens up the conversation a bit into something that isn't just arguing about bars and hits, and I think these items, these T-shirts kind of work in that way. But those are the things I still have. Like I'll pay too much money for a ticket. I'll pay a service charge to get in the building, and I'll overpay for that T-shirt, and I'll look at that T-shirt and be so happy I bought it.
I saw people annoyed at Virgil's art design on the West Side Gun album, and I liked it.
I like Virgil too.
It was like a classic, I don't know, I want to say biblical, old world art painting. I don't know if it's Rembrandt or Goya or whoever, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And he like intentionally, sloppily cut out West Side Gun's chains and put them around the neck of the character. And I saw people saying, I could have done so much better with Photoshop. I'm like, you don't get what he's doing.
Right.
Like it's non-design, man.
Yes. And it's so tricky. I think that like I really liked that album cover. When I saw that, I was like, yo, and when I thought that Virgil
cool.
did it, it's great. And I think there's kind of a discussion there that is more nuanced than just like that didn't look like it took him a long time. And I always see like record covers and T-shirts as the ultimate thing, because what you ask of a record cover and T-shirt is it has to be clever, smart, funny, serious, instantly recognizable, kind of like a logo, so we'll always remember it, but of the moment and timeless. I'm like, okay,
oh, man, you just gave everyone the secret formula to that Kuo touch.
Right. It's like, do everything at the same time, go. It's like,
and make it timeless and iconic yet clever. And everyone's like, okay, timeless, iconic. I've got the Kuo model down.
Yeah. Make it about something I can laugh about now, but glad I have 10 years from now.
Make it good in the moment and make me want to wear it today, but also forever.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, so it's forever. Let me get that. Got it. Forever. Cool forever. Got it.
Yeah. I wish I had like a camera or like recorded myself when I first saw that Jeezy Snowman. It would have sounded like, what?
You can do that?
It's like, oh my God, what is that? That's what I probably sounded like. But yeah, this cover's awesome, and Virgil is so good at this stuff, and his criticism, not unlike the criticism of French Montana, to me is like predictable, but doesn't really understand the whole puzzle. And I'm a Virgil fan, man.
I feel like the arguments in rap music that are about skillfulness, artistry, authenticity, etc., were probably fought in the art world decades ago. Still, but also the idea of, well, my kid could do that, so how is it art? Mm-hmm. He's not a good rapper. He can barely string words together. How is this good rap? How is this enjoyable? How can Little B make good music if these are nursery rhymes? Because I like Rakim, and that's what rap sounds like to me. How is Ben Simmons? How on earth is he not a liability as an NBA player dribbling the ball who can't shoot? How is that possible? That offends me. As someone who grew up watching basketball players shoot, I am morally offended, and I'm going to take it out on him, because that's not what a basketball player looks like to me. And this is a generational thing right across everything. And basketball is art, and we forget that sometimes.
Oh my God, yeah, for sure. And you're right. You're completely right. Like, there was somebody who could paint a still life that look like the actual object, and then someone paints a white square, and you're like, that's not real. I've painted my wall white before.
No.
That's not
I've
art.
seen an apple, and that is a white square.
Yes.
There's no apple here. There's no Horatio skull. Sorry, dude.
Right. And that is the basis of every Kendrick Lamar debate on Twitter about DJ Premier, about how French Montana can't stand up to an authentic rapper that has been approved by his community. And yeah, this goes into basketball and the BMM so fluidly that it is why we do cookies. Who is revealing the secret sauce now, Ben?
Well, before we go on to that, I want to ask you a personal question, because you are a modern artist, not only with
so.
your T-shirt acumen and your Cool Now, Cool Forever designs, available on cookieshoops.com.
Right.
You know, you do abstract work. You do geometric and colorful with captions. What is like the worst criticism that someone gave you? Is there anything that like someone has said along those lines, this isn't art, that was like hurtful? Or have you just had universal accolades?
Not at all. I mean, the minute you publish something or the minute you have something online, like there's going to be people who his job is to break it down, and it all kind of hurts my feelings, but I'm older now, and it's death by a million posts or comments, I guess.
Death by a million mid-range jumpers.
Yeah. But, some people will say it's derivative of my heroes like Frank Stella or Barnett Newman. But, what I try to do, it's funny you call it abstract. I call it figurative because I make rules and I have to follow them. And if they don't follow the rules, I have to change it so it works.
I mean, you are the expert. I'm saying abstract in it that it's not a skull or an apple or a bucket of pears.
Yes. I do that intentionally, obviously, but when I started making paintings, that was something like I actually wrote down on paper, like what are the things that interest you in art history? What are the things that you are happy to make, and why are they important to me? And I came to a point, I think 4 or 5 years into making art in New York, that I had my title moment where I was just like, something's got to change. And I came up with these little geometric abstract charts. And to somebody who is so much of a better painter than I am, and for them to say that's just a bunch of shapes, I'm like, unfortunately, you are totally correct.
Exposed.
Yeah, they got me, and it all hurts my feelings, but I maybe belabor it too much, so I try to find a little bit of joy in it, because if you're not enjoying French Montana, what are you doing?
I'm saying maybe you should try your hand at a nice seascape.
I do. I do Sunday painter shit.
Get yourself a lighthouse, maybe a moon, some clouds, a nice big ship.
You can't run away from what you're actually interested in ever. So you can fool somebody for 2 albums, but on your 3rd album, you're always going to gravitate back to what you actually care about.
Hence the Jeremy Lin collection.
Yeah, pretty much. Or Weezer, right? This guy was just a hair metal fan. He made Rivers Cuomo made an emo masterpiece, but he's not emo. He likes dueling guitars, and he should just do his damn thing.
We're on the musical bent today. There was a fairly interesting article in Pitchfork about the current state of rap production. And as someone who has not covered that genre in quite some time and has only really indulged in it as a fan, I was not aware of the trend of guys called loopers. This is a Pitchfork article. It's quite long. And it's about guys who are, they're spread across the globe, and they specialize in making loops. They're using keyboards, sometimes guitars, their own instruments. They don't make whole songs. They just do loops, just melody guys.
Thousands of them.
And yeah, exactly. They make thousands,
volume
hundreds,
shooters.
just zillions of them. Yeah. And then they mail them obviously email.
Post them. Yeah.
And give them to sort of well-known producers who then will pick through them, find melodies they like, give those guys usually and ideally a credit and publishing on it. Mm-hmm. But of course, there are times when those advantages are abused and people, I guess, are not credited or stuff is stolen. But generally speaking, the way it works is these loopers will get a little production credit, they'll get a little money, and then the other producer, the big name, will take those loops and they'll go to guys like Playboi Carti or Bieber, even. Yeah, they could go to anyone. And that's kind of the state of current rap production, is the usage of almost like TaskRabbit producers. Kind of interesting. I did not know this.
Yeah, I didn't know the details, the gritty details of it until I read that article, but it's kind of awesome. I'm really feeling it, and it kind of reminds me of our chicken sandwich conversation, the invasive chicken sandwich. Do we want this? I'm like, no, until we do. And the purists would, in the article, it mentioned the backlash to this process and being like, well, it's just volume shooting and anyone can get this. So the artistic vision of a producer who takes some of these bits and pieces isn't authentic because it's just a library of Congress, right? You're just pulling things from other sources, and it needs to be a personal statement from you. And I just love it. I think this was gonna happen. You can almost predict this when we were fawning over Dilla and Madlib and all these kind of true nerds mining all these short songs. And Dilla, rest in peace, had a whole album of just 1 minute ideas, and then he moved on very quickly. And I think it taught the language of these loop makers and how to express themselves. And these are true nerds, high school kids who aren't adults yet. They come from everywhere, but it's usually a technological young thing, because it's
tons of them are from Eastern Europe. They could be from Australia, New Zealand. As you said, there's no geographical sort of alignment. It's not like they're dudes from the South making Southern rap. They could be anywhere on the globe, and they're just churning out, melodies, and sometimes influenced by the music in their area that then becomes part of the DNA of contemporary rap, which I think is also kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think the process would start as a looper would say, I want to provide, in order to make money, I want to provide a producer with a whole spectrum of sounds, whether that be from the South, New York, LA, new, old, middle, all of those things. I want my CV to be complete. And then at a certain point be like, well, I live in Russia, and these are the things that interest me, and a personality kind of comes in then,
So one issue here, though, that is a bit, what's the word we're looking for? It's not unseemly, but does change up the dynamic, is that for ages, producers would make beat tapes. Mm-hmm. This is what producers always did. Mm-hmm. And to find the sample, produce the whole track, almost a whole instrumental, but then maybe they'd put a minute of it on it. And minute and a half, okay, this is what the beat's like, here's what the drums, etc. It wouldn't even be a reference track. It would just be a beat tape. Yeah. And those might get in the hands of a rapper or a manager who would play them for a rapper. A rapper would say, oh, I like this. And sometimes there'd be watermarks on them. You wouldn't leave beats open so that another producer could just take it. Mm-hmm. You might leave the whole thing intact, with drums everywhere and stuff. But someone might actually record over that in their home studio, then it would get bought, and then they'd go and actually buy the sample and clear it, and whatever. That was how it kind of worked. But you would get credit if you made that beat. You would sell it. You might make a couple $1,000, but you would sell that beat. And I did a story for Scratch Magazine about G-Unit's method for doing this. And it was Shaw Money XL, and he would listen to all these beat tapes, and he'd find good ones, and he'd give someone a couple $1,000, and they'd buy the beat. And you'd look at G-Unit releases at that time. There's a lot of no-name producers all over them. And you had guys like Jake One who were in his camp, they were Shaw Money, G-Unit sort of crew of producers, but there were no names. And then this really became an online thing. And I know Chief Keef found a beat that someone had put on YouTube as Chief Keef type beat. and end up using it on his album. But where this is different is that they're actually giving their loops to producers who are kind of getting credit for it by being like the main producer on the song. They're not going to rappers or managers. They're going directly to known established producers who are kind of just picking and choosing someone else's work and then calling it their own, but giving ideally some credit and some money to the guy who kind of made the song. Might not be that different from like Quincy Jones or Dr. Dre working in the studio with other people. Is that the kind of comparison maybe?
I love it. You know, like a few years ago, there was a big debate if like were curators actually artists, you know, and obviously the curators started that debate, but it was a good one. And are the choices you make in this modern technological zone, is that the art? And you know, I think the capitalist idea, the idea of artistic capitalism is interesting. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about like that economic philosophy going into creating something and finding and picking through available influences to create your own thing is to me 100% valid. And
it's a bit like looking for a sample on an old record. It just happens to be a sample that someone made in Bulgaria like last week.
Yeah. And does the producer who sampled or who bought that loop, are they the artist? For sure. Like this is the factory records thing, right? Like they were celebrating the medium and not the artist. So we would freak out when we heard a record come on that we liked. And we're post DJ culture now, and we recognize DJs as artists, and we can do this too.
And at the same time, it's not as if some producers weren't using ghost producers anyway.
Right.
Like some of the most notable dudes. And I'm not just talking about session musicians like Scott Storch playing keys. You know, like I remember, I forget the guy's name. There was a dude I remember meeting, and you know, he was making beats and he was under Marley Marl, and those beats would end up coming out as Marley Marl. Mm-hmm. And he may have had his crew, they may have gotten credit, they may have gotten paid, but this was like formative days of hip hop production. And they had guys working with them and making stuff that ultimately carried their seal of approval and, you know, buoyed their reputation.
Remember when we were trying to figure out who Arco was? It's like, is that just Kanye, one of his friends? And we found out it was like a producer, an actual artist from, I believe, New Jersey. But Arca had, I don't know the pronoun, had his stamp on a lot of hits at that time. And producers were mining his sound. And, he put out, eventually put out albums that of his own vision. But at the time, it was trying to figure out what source these producers were mining the sound from. And, as we found out, like when Yams died, ASAP, from the ASAP crew, it's like the influence he had just as something producers would, as a person producers would consult with and kind of ask him what he was listening to and his vision of what that scene would be.
Yes. Yeah. And I know this goes back to the idea of authenticity, that a real producer is DJ Premier, a guy with an MPC who puts on a Ahmad Jamal record, finds a piano, samples it himself, adds, impeats the president drums, and that's how a real beat is made. But it's actually just never been like that.
Yeah. I mean, we still can't listen to De La Soul records on these platforms because it's too expensive. And De La Soul are standalone artists to me. But we're living in a new era, right? And like the debate with these loop producers is going to intensify because they're going to become their own artists and producers.
Yeah, and they're using it as a stepping stone to try to become those same producers who are using their stuff. Like, get my name on a couple tracks. Now I can give people my beats and have them check them out and make the real money.
Right. Is Dr. Dre the middleman? Can we eliminate him? If a producer is mining a loop maker for a few hit tracks, what's to prevent an artist manager saying like to the loop maker like, can you just do this on your own? Can you make a hotter track? And
Absolutely
the loop maker's
nothing.
probably like, yes, I can.
So speaking of a new era, the New
Yes.
York Knicks.
Oh my God, here we go. Well, they won
It's-
the championship in 2020.
It's a new era for the Knicks. They have
Excited.
made a hire. You excited? You excited about this? They
So
have
excited.
signed Brock Ayler, who is the former capologist of the Cleveland Cavaliers. His major claim to fame is cooking the books so that they were able to add legend Timofey Mozgov in
Knicks
2014.
Yeah, for that championship run with LeBron.
And he is apparently, in his role with the Knicks, going to have a lot of power and be a, quote, chief strategist. As a Knicks fan, how do you feel about the signing, the hiring of Mr. Brock Ayler?
Great. As long as his real name isn't Herb Williams, I'm down. Like, these new faces, I wasn't really aware of his resume before this news went down, and I quickly went through it. Good, fine, great. He did a good job in Cleveland, the results, bias, whatever. Fine, this is awesome. This is not the usual cast not the usual players in this story at the Garden, and I'm all for it. And he seems like a true capologist and not Herb Williams giving the cap a shot. Do you know what I mean?
I view the move as definitely positive, in that if you're the Knicks, the biggest problem has been that they have not seemed to value talented people who are from outside the organization.
1,000%.
They went and handpicked, Steve Perry. Steve Perry? Steve? Is that right?
Is Steve Perry the singer of Journey?
Tim Perry?
Scott Perry.
Former Sixer, Tim Perry? Scott Perry. Scott Perry was someone that they liked, but he was hand-chosen by the Knicks, so was therefore contaminated. It's like
Wait,
the
Steve-
Corona law.
Yeah, okay, go on.
Like, if Mills and Houston wanted this guy, then he's been tainted by his closeness to Mills and Houston. By Leon Rose going to get this guy, speaking of loopers, our guy, Brock Ayler, is from outside of that closed circuit. He is untouched by Knickerbocker hands. And I find
Unsullied?
that he's unsullied because Leon Rose is only sullied by 1 degree of separation.
Right.
No, I like the signing because it's from someone out of the building. Mm-hmm. Bring in some guys who are respected around the league. And I think that Leon Rose can do that. I think Leon Rose is a capable, smart person. I don't know if he would be a good GM, but this is exactly what you want him to do. Delegate roles to people who are good at them and keep it moving. If your job is like, I know all the superstars and I'm going to try to lure Joel Embiid here. I'm going to try to ask him. I'm going to try to get him to call for a trade, and we're going to try to bring him to New York because that's my guy. That's your Leon Rose. If you're like, let's go get a very good capologist. Okay, done. Check it off the list. We got a good cap guy. Okay. And that's how you build out your front office. That's what Sam Hinkie did. He went and he got smart people like Sachin Gupta. Oh, you're the guy who built the trade machine. You worked with Daryl Morey in Houston. Okay, we'll take you. Ben Falk, you're super smart. You know everything. You work for Portland. We're going to hire you. And I think that's the right approach. Hire good people. It's revolutionary, I know, for the Knicks. It's a weird idea, but what if you just hired good people?
This is a great segue from the Looper conversation, right? Have all these resources available to you and pick the best ones. Know that your universe is bigger, always bigger than you think. I'm not gonna lie, I immediately Googled to see if he was Christian, and I couldn't get to the bottom of that. It was a very quick search, but my whole theory is about Dolan and who he hires and the parameters of working at MSG. But I'm excited for this regime, man. It seems like Perry's job is safe as GM, I heard. Did not love Rose coming out and saying he might be giving up on Kevin Knox, which I think is dumb. But otherwise, like, yeah, this hire is optimistic. To your exact point, these are, from what we can tell, very smart people who will create an environment at the Garden that is better than what we've seen before.
Like, do I know what Brock Aller's worldview is? I have no idea. But I know that he has a degree of competency and familiarity with the salary cap, that he can come up with ideas to get things done that people want to occur. And I will say, to his credit, the Cavs always seem to figure out ways to add a little bit more money, to add a little bit more talent during LeBron's tenure. They spent a shit ton of money, and the Knicks are capable of doing that.
Exactly.
So he's kind of a guy who does also have that kind of background where you say, if we've got an owner that's willing to blow up the salary cap, we need a guy who's good at tinkering with things and allowing him to do that.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it. That doesn't mean that the decisions he makes or his beliefs are great. I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
But he is good at one thing: jerry-rigging the cap to spend money. Cool. Good shit.
And he might never be in the position in New York to add a Timothy Mozgov as the final piece for a championship. But
Mozgov is available, though.
yeah. Is he? I was thinking about that. Is he out of the league or is he hurt?
I think some team, maybe it was Orlando, got one of those like exemptions because he was hurt and didn't play this year, I think. But anyway, he's
What a
ready.
successful
He's
career.
rested and ready.
I always liked him. But I'm happy about this, right? Because the Knicks are not behaving like the Knicks. And they have not been behaving like the Knicks for a season, less than a season, and I'm happy about that. And what Aller did in Cleveland was pretty suave, man.
I'm saying respect. Like, they did a
Yeah.
good job of that.
I agree, man, and it worked out for them. And I'm sure they had to sell Dolan on like, well, they won a championship because of it. He was like, okay, check. But I like the regime here. I think Mills and Houston are still in the building, maybe like in Dolan's office. Maybe they are James Dolan when Dolan is touring with JD in the Straight Shot. Oh man, this coronavirus. If the Straight Shot can't go on their incredible world tours, he's going to be tinkering with the Knicks like never before, man.
I can't wait to see it.
You'll love to see it.
How about we just call this an abbreviated cookies today? Only an hour for our loyal listeners.
Love it.
Sorry, guys.
Celebrate
Shorter
Earth
version.
Day. Yeah,
It's Earth Day. Go outside, Kuo.
I'm gonna frolic. I am my own man on Earth Day.
Cookies.
Cookies.